everybody doing today? Welcome to another special live stream where we have Lee Hoy will be with us today, OM System Ambassador, nature wildlife photographer, and he's really doing a lot of good on his YouTube channel. Has so many tips and tricks and videos about best settings and approaches to doing wildlife and nature photography for particularly for the OM system, obviously, right? But Lee Hoy is, as many of you know, and if you don't know him, is very straightforward and candid in his photography and in how he um, answers questions and talks about photography and cameras. So I guess that's one of his signature. Uh, this is a signature item of his channel and his personality, is I'm so sorry. He's just very candid, is the way I'll put it. And I think there's a certain integrity and honesty in his videos and in the way he teaches and talks about photography that all of you appreciate. And we're gonna dive in mostly into what the OM system cameras for wildlife and the features and computational photography and everything like that in the cameras, and also in just nature and wildlife photography in general, his approach. And I have a bunch of questions laid out. In other words, I don't know why my brain is not working today, but uh, I'm really excited to have Lee with me, and it's a great honor and privilege to have him here. And I hope that you'll welcome him as much as I did when he reached out to me to talk about the OM system, because that is kind of their focus, is in nature and wildlife. So without further ado, before I say anything more, let me bring Lee in. Lee, how are you?
I'm doing great, bud. How are you?
Good, good. I'm sorry about that choppy intro. I just
No worries,
I
Rob.
my
No
brain,
worries.
my gears are still not quite greased yet this morning. But for those that may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and you know what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely, yes. Well, you know what, Rob is such a nice guy. I mean, he's so nice. He was trying to say that I am extremely direct in my approach, and he said it some, but Rob's so nice he can't even say. Oh, I think I may have froze for a second. And I have Starlink internet. I live in the middle of nowhere on top of a mountain in West Texas. So if you guys see a freeze or a pause, Rob or someone, just let me know. But that happens every now and then as it shifts from satellite to satellite. You know, from the time I was young, I had something happen to me in sixth grade where I don't do fake, I don't do inauthentic, I don't do fake compliments. Something significant in my life happened that taught me that hiding things or not being honest with others, regardless of what you think that might do, is not good. So I don't ever appreciate inauthenticity, fakeness, fake compliments, not telling people the truth. And yeah, I come off as having probably this pretty gruff exterior. I'm actually a very caring guy on the inside, but I try not to let that get out a lot because then people will know that I'm not as mean as I come off as. I mean, when I do my videos like on Instagram stories or Facebook, Rob, I don't know if you've ever seen one of my intros where I say, "Hi, I'm Lee Hoy, your generally friendly OM system ambassador." And I get comments all the time back that are dying laughing. So let me tell you what, yeah, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So this is my fifth career. I have 3 degrees. I have a bachelor's of geography. I have a master's of regional and city planning with a transportation planning specialty. My geography specialty was cartography and GIS, and I have a master of divinity with biblical languages. So I have 3 degrees,
Wow.
5 careers, and I'm doing what I wanted to do when I grew up. Right. So I started my first camera was when I was 6. It was kind of a toy camera. I actually found one of them in a box on eBay. It looks like a rifle. And my first real camera was a Canon A1 my mom gave me in when I was a little bit about 16 or so, and it had a broken meter. So I had to learn the Sunny F16 rule, which I've since got put on my arm. Would have been nice to have this, the Partly Cloudy F11 rule, if I'd have had that back in the day. So that would have been helpful. I can tell you that, so for me, I can look outside at the amount of light and I can tell you, oh, I froze again. I think what's happening is it's saying an upload in progress. I don't know what's uploading, so something is uploading.
Well, you look good. I'm not really seeing any freezing on my end.
Oh, good. Okay, good,
But
good, good,
the
good.
audio's good, so just keep
Okay.
going.
Okay, good. So when I can look outside and tell you about what my exposure should be like, if I wanted to shoot wildlife action, I want to be at 1/2500th of a second. Right now, I can look out and tell you that with my OM system, my ISO should be at least 6400 because it's kind of overcast right now. So I learned and was forced to learn the technical side all on my own. And then I realized that the more you master the technical side, the less your brain thinks about it. I know Rob's heard me use the phrase subconscious intentionality, where your mind thinks about something, but you don't even realize you are. And that's where we want to master our system and get to where we can do the exposure side, do the autofocus side without thinking about it, so that our mind is freed up to handle the creative side of photography. And that's when you will see a dramatic increase in what I call visually compelling images. And that is my pursuit, is helping people capture visually compelling images. I delete good and great images all the time because I shoot at 50 frames per second. I might capture 50 amazing shots of this one bird in flight, but one of them, maybe two, I'm going to go, oh, that's the one. And I don't know if y'all can hear, I have a hepatic tanager singing out off the back porch, which is a cool bird to have in your yard. But if y'all hear a bird singing, it's a hepatic tanager. For me, I really take tremendous delight in teaching others how to master their system. So I had been a Canon photography. I'd shot Canon for 25 years. I had the big Canon 600 f4, was tired of carrying that weight, was kind of tired of spending so much money on lenses. And I saw they were falling way behind in the digital world. And some of y'all may shoot Canon. You may not feel it did, but it was falling way behind. And I had friends that worked at Canon. I can tell you their stories of why I knew they were falling behind. So I started shooting Canon, Sony, OM, Olympus at the time. And the special features, the lightweight, the price, the quality convinced me to get rid of everything else and stick with OM system. And within a year of switching, I was invited to become what was then an Olympus educator and now an OM system ambassador, which I proudly wear on my chest, and very pleased with that accomplishment. But I can teach all the systems. I mean, I understand all the systems well and love doing workshops, but I really am in love with a lot of the special features in the OM system. So my favorite genres are wildlife. I love night sky, macro, landscape. I do camera trapping when I have the time. I love high-speed macro. I actually built that table you see right there for high-speed macro, but my house is small and now it's covered with camera gear and a TV. But yeah, so that's kind of my background. My interests in genres will change out here where I live near Big Bend National Park. As the seasons change, my interest in what I want to photograph at home changes. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, you have such a interesting background in the degrees that you have and the work that you've done, but sounds like you've been in photography pretty much all your life. Either as a hobby and then now professionally. I myself, time is passing fast. I'm now 10 years into photography myself, so I'm just getting started, really. And honestly, what got me into it, or what's kept me in it, I would say, is the OM systems and Olympus originally, but now OM systems. And if were it not for the amazing cameras that they made and the way it connected with me, I would not have stayed in this hobby this long. Anybody that knows me and my family, they know I'm good for a year or two, and then I move on to something else. But this somehow the photography and OM systems really kept me going because I had originally started myself with Sony and then moved to Nikon a couple years after that. And then I was almost done. I was like a couple years after that, and I said, let me just try one more camera. And I got an EM10 Mark II, and the
Oh,
rest is history. I've been with it ever since.
oh, that's cool.
Uh, but I can tell you, if I was still shooting Sony or Nikon, I probably wouldn't be in photography anymore. I
I
mean, it
tell
sounds
you,
weird, but
no, that I can tell you, Rob, from doing workshops all over the world and having clients with all camera systems, except I've never had a client with a Panasonic camera. I've had two doing wildlife with Fuji, and hey, Fuji's got some great cameras. They do not have great wildlife cameras, just plain and simple.
right.
And I've actually had one client now with a Leica for wildlife, which was a waste of money. I hate to say that, but the reality is that I've dealt with all the systems, and if I can tell you, and I know people may disagree with me, if I had to go to Canon, Sony, or Nikon, I can tell you I would be handicapped in the images I can get. I'm not saying you can't capture great images with those, but I can tell you that I would feel like I was giving up too many things that are very important to me. I know some people, they probably won't believe me, but if you watch my videos, I don't bullshit you. I would not, if they came to me and said, Lee, if you get rid of your own system gear, we will give you some Canon, Nikon, Sony gear free. I would say, no, thank you. I appreciate it, but no. And I know people who won't believe me, but if you know me long enough, no, I wouldn't get rid of it. I have too many advantages that for me personally are very valuable in my photography.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wanted to kind of ask you about was uh what are some of your favorite OM system features and cameras, computational photography, whatever. What is it that about the OM system, you know, system, the OM system that has that you like so much about it that, everything else just doesn't matter anymore?
So one of the top ones, the first time I used the on the Mark II, the OM1 Mark II, the first time I used the built-in graduated neutral density filter, I was out, it was dark. I was shooting a YouTube video that I still haven't released yet on the circadian rhythm of natural light. Okay. And what the feature I love, I looked over and there was around the moon, there was a moonbow, complete moonbow. It was incredible. And I thought, and the moon was pretty bright. And I thought, and I had not used the graduated neutral density filter yet. I was like, God, if I had a way to hold back to hold back the sky so the foreground was brighter. And all of a sudden I went, oh, duh, I've got the built-in graduated neutral density filter. So I turned it on, flipped it upside down, and I was like, oh, I can tell you, I had not been using the 7 to 14 millimeter lens much, but with the built-in, because it's that bulbous end just doesn't handle the sun sometimes as well. But with the built-in graduated neutral density filter, suddenly I'm using that lens a lot more. So the built-in digital autofocus limiter, if you're at a blind in Costa Rica and the birds are about 25 feet away, man, set the digital autofocus limiter, for 20 feet to 30 feet. Boom. That's another one of my favorite features when I know I'm setting up somewhere. For me, when I'm shooting nature, let's say I'm sticking to wildlife. When I shot the big Canon 600, I had to be on a tripod all the time. Well, being able to handhold, I've handheld the 150 to 400 at half a second tack sharp. Now, obviously, the bird can't be moving. So the lightweight combined with the image stabilization, I am all about nailing shots that I couldn't get hand holding otherwise. I had a client in Brazil bring along the big Canon 600 F4. Well, he couldn't hardly hold it up and he missed tons of shots. He was getting frustrated, but most of the time he's bragging about his lens, but but it's like a paperweight, man. What are you doing with it? So those are some of the things that some of the quick features, I like doing long lens, panoramic landscapes out here in Big Bend, you know, where you got big scenes and they're way off. And I learned a long time ago, when I was younger, I thought whenever I saw a big scene, I automatically pulled out a wide angle lens. But as you know, that pushes subjects way away, right? It makes big mountains small. And I was like, gosh, this doesn't look like in my mind. And one day I realized, you know what? If I use a long lens, I pull the viewer into that landscape scene, right? But then with a long lens, you can't see the entire scene in front of you. And I started doing long lens panoramic shots, and that really revolutionized my photography. I have a shot in the middle of an album for the BBC Big Ben special, that Explosions in the Sky, they were the soundtrack. And that is a long lens pano, you know, that would not have looked nearly the same. The sky above the clouds was all blue. You could not have framed that image with a wide angle lens and had that same that image. So that's something I really like. Those are some of the features I'd say that jump out at me the most.
That's interesting. I wanted to kind of just walk back a little bit to the Grad ND. Did you say you were shooting the moon using Grad ND?
Okay, so a moon bow, you know how you get a rainbow around the moon? Like when it's cold enough, there's ice crystals in the sky. I'm not Mr. Meteorologist, but if you go out sometimes on a bright moon at certain temperatures, and you need the temperature up in the sky, not necessarily on the ground, you can actually see a full or partial moon bow, just like you see a sun bow. You know, you see rainbows around the sun. I've only seen maybe 4 or 5 moon bows. And I'm doing a YouTube video. I'm getting my video and everything set up in the lighting, because I'm at a state park about 5 miles as the crow flies over here, but it takes me 55 miles to drive there to come down around the mountains. And I just glanced over and I'm like, oh my God, there's a moon bow. And I immediately knew, oh my gosh, this is unique. So I adjusted. There's an old CCC WPA structure at this state park that is incredible. Okay. And I immediately knew, oh my gosh, I've got to photograph this. But I realized, so I took my first shot. Well, I didn't have that much detail in the foreground, because the moon, so to properly expose for the moon bow, my foreground was too dark. And I was like, golly, I didn't bring up, oh, wait a minute, I have a Mark II on here, right? So I thought, well, I'm going to turn it on. I hadn't even looked. I mean, I'd probably had the OM1 Mark II for a week. I hadn't even had a chance to kind of look into it. I turned it on. I started spinning it around. I was like, oh, I can flip it upside down, which obviously made a tremendous difference. And then what I really wanted, I was like, okay, let me see what I can do with this. Started exposing for it, and I immediately knew, oh man, this is a game changer. This is an absolute game changer for me. So that was pretty cool. I wish I could find that shot. I don't think I have it somewhere quickly.
Are you going to put it in your video when it comes out?
Yes, I will have it in the video when it comes out.
All right. Everybody look forward to that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to touch on was, you talked about the focus limiter, and in a good use case is in a blind where you know something's only going to be a certain distance. But do you set your ranges that tight? Because you said like between 25 and 30 feet, or did I not hear that correctly?
No, you heard me correct. So here's the thing. This is what I tell people, Rob. Too often, photographers are worried about photographing everything. Okay. But the reality is, if you want to capture visually compelling images, you have to narrow your focus. So one of the things I often see, say I'm going to Brazil to do jaguars. A lot of the photographers that come to me, they want to be ready to photograph everything. That is what I call setting yourself up for failure. But I try to teach how to set yourself up for success. So if I'm at a bird blind, right, that has your perch set up, you know, your setup, right? Do you want to capture phenomenal shots, or do you want to try to be ready to capture everything? Now, for people that want to document everything they see, they're not going to capture many visually compelling images. And next, they're setting themselves up for failure, because they're going to swing left and photograph a bird in shadow. They're going to swing right, and they're going to photograph a bird in the sun. And they think, oh, I'll put it on auto ISO. Well, auto ISO sucks. That is one of the top 2 worst settings in any camera. And I see a question in here about someone, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. that's just setting yourself up for failure. And I know you like to, y'all, some of y'all are going to watch videos from photographers are going to teach you how to fix crappy shots using software. I don't teach you how to make chicken salad out of chicken manure. I teach you how to capture an image correctly and start off with an awesome shot. So I want you to realize that you will capture better photography if you narrow your focus. So Rob, you know, I'm a Scotch Irish guy. I'm built like a mule. I used to carry the Canon 600 on a tripod, a dual Black Rapid breathe strap with a 100 to 400 on one side and a macro on another because I wanted to be ready for birds, for macro. And one day I said, you know what would happen to my photography if I just took one of them out? So if I'm going to do macro, guess what I photograph? I photograph macro. If I'm going to do birds and wildlife, I'm going to do birds and wildlife. I don't carry a landscape camera most of the time. Now, if I'm walking around the Galapagos Islands, yeah, I'll have a wide angle and I'll have a long lens. But most of the time, that wide angle, I'm still doing wildlife because I'm not going to carry a tripod with me on the Galapagos for landscape stuff, which I like a lot. So if you're at a blind and you're going to use the digital autofocus limiter, maybe you're at a backyard setup, maybe you're in Costa Rica, maybe you're along a beach or a cliff, and most of the birds you're photographing are at a certain distance. If you're doing hummingbirds at a feeder, right, high speed or not, using that digital autofocus limiter, you cannot imagine how much more effective your autofocus will be in terms of lightning fast. And until recently, OM System was the only camera that built in digital autofocus limiter. I know there's one other company now that offers it, but if you look at digital autofocus switches on most lenses, they're too generic. I never use a switch on side of a lens for autofocus limiter. They're too big a range or too small. They're not specific enough. Well, with that digital one, you can program that to a button. Did you know this, Rob? You can go in and set 3 different digital autofocus zones. So if you have a backyard blind setup and you're always the same distance from it, make that one of your zones. You can press that button, spin a dial, and go to whichever zone you want. Okay. Now you may need to go into the menu system, just the feed or meter setting. But yes, the more specific you are, the more you're setting yourself up for success. So even on the macro lens, okay, I'm not going to bother with the switch on the lens. I go into the digital autofocus limiter because if I'm doing the 90 millimeter
Oops, hold on. Now you froze.
most venomous snakes, I'm not 2 feet away unless it's a black
Hold on, Lee. 1 second. We lost the last 30 seconds of what you said about just when you were
what was the last thing you heard?
You said you picked up the camera with the macro lens.
Okay. Even with macro, I don't use focus limiters on the lens. So say you have the 90 millimeter macro, okay? I will go into the digital autofocus limiter and I'm going to set it to close focus and maybe 2 feet. If I'm using the 90 millimeter, I am not photographing subjects normally more than 2 feet away. Even a lot of venomous snakes, I'm not more than 2 feet away, obviously depending upon the species, right? Like a black mamba, yeah. I'm not getting 2 feet from a black mamba. But for most real world situations with a 90 millimeter, when I go out for macro, so why not set your digital autofocus there? Because I tend to use AI bird subject detection for most reptiles, amphibians, and insects because it works overall pretty well. There are certain kinds of insects that it's not going to. Well, I have a button program for AI subject detection that I can turn that on and off, okay? But for a lot of insects, reptiles and amphibians, bird AI subject detection works really well. The way to tell if it's not working well, Rob, if you have eye detection frame turned on and you see that box constantly jumping around, you need to turn off subject detection. So if the box isn't staying in place relatively consistently, just turn it off when you're doing macro. Some poison dart frogs, their eyes are so dark and the black around it so dark that the eye doesn't really stand out to the camera depending on the light, right? So if you see that box jumping constantly, then just disengage it. It doesn't work perfect for all those subjects, but it works well
Right.
enough where I use it a lot. Okay.
Right. Okay. Wow. That's amazing. You just given me a lot of ideas just in that little space of time right there. I never thought about using grad ND in at night, like for a moonshot, but that makes complete sense.
It's
And
powerful.
using a macro lens rather than using the switch, just set it up digitally in camera. Then you don't have to fuss with that dial. That makes a lot of sense.
But what
I've never.
happens, Rob, you know what happens? People think, well, what if there's something further? Well, who cares? Whatever it is, enjoy it. Learn to be okay not taking a picture, to focus on capturing visually compelling images. Again, you have to become okay with missing out on certain things, but the quality of your images is going to skyrocket once you do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's excellent. Definitely is having impact on the way I'm going to think about the next time I go out. And then you touched on, we'll skip this part, but you did touch on, the overall size weight of the system. I think everybody's familiar that,
Mhm.
you just can't beat a Micro Four Thirds system when it comes to portability and travelability, I think is the right word, if that's a word at all. But traveling with a camera system is, not, nothing comes close to a Micro Four Thirds system. And, we won't get too technical about cropping and all of that, but uh, that's great. So let me ask you, I know that I've had other ambassadors on that talked about handheld high-res shot mode in nature photography for, like I did a tree frog in handheld high-res shot mode. How often do you use that, or do you just avoid it, or
No, I
what's your use?
love long lens, handheld, high res panoramics. I have panoramics of 20 something images that I could blow up 20, 30 feet. No problem. No problem. Because I'm doing the high res. So your technique needs to be, so like the 40 to 150 2.8, perfect for this. The 12 to 100 f4, both those are my two long lens pano landscape. I mean, absolutely hand down. Okay. So the thing is you have to do, of course, the Mark II now, because it is faster at recording a high res shot, is my preferred body over the OM1, but you can do it with that. I have not done it yet with the OM3. I'm sure it'll be fine. Um, but you take a picture, but you don't move until it finishes recording the image, and then 25% overlap, bam, bam, bam. And I'm telling you, with those two lenses, with built-in image, with built-in or with image stabilization, you will be amazed at the images you'll capture. If I have certain landscape scenes, you know how there's certain times where light is moving quickly. I will sometimes forego high res based on the speed of things, right? And the
Mhm.
length of. I'm not afraid to do a high res 20-second shot. So on a landscape on a tripod, that is a very long overall exposure. It depends. You have to think about what is it you want your final image. Okay. Um, I mean, a high res shot can blur water pretty cool at certain times, right? So it all depends on the creative element of the image I'm trying to communicate. That's what drives when I'm doing a high res shot. I don't always feel I need it, but when I do, I love it. But I don't always feel like for every particular landscape shot. So I don't really with wildlife. I don't really do it. I would with certain macro, like a frog's a perfect subject if it's sitting still, right? Obviously, your subject has to be sitting still to do that. So yeah,
Right.
frog would be awesome for that. But I don't tend because you know what I do, Rob? I deprogram. You know how the default is the record button for high res, right? I generally reprogram that button for other things except my landscape mode. Every camera body I have, my custom modes are programmed differently, and the buttons are programmed differently from one custom mode to another. I
Yeah.
know for the most part. Now the AEL button, that is always focus bracketing for me. That's always that. The plus minus button for wildlife and macro modes is always turning on and off AI subject detection. But for landscape and night sky, that's to turn on the graduated neutral density filter.
Yeah.
So my buttons vary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that goes back to, uh, setting up the camera for taking, visually compelling images, as you say, right? And having a particular thing you're going to go out and shoot. You're not trying to do everything. You're going to set up your camera exactly the way you want it to capture this particular thing today.
Well, it's related to
That
the whole theme of when we were talking about this particular YouTube live about mastering your system. My phrase is master your system, master your photography.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can hold my cameras behind my body, and if you say make certain adjustments, to your exposure, I can do it without looking. That's mastering your system so that in the moment, I see a lot of clients and I see a lot of photographers out in the field, something amazing's happening and they're looking down at their camera, fiddle farting around with it because they haven't mastered it. And they're trying to figure out some setting. And by the time they get there, whatever they want to photograph is already gone. Right. So this is a tool. Yes, these are expensive tools. They're fun tools. They're great to talk about. But it's a tool like a hammer. The hammer is not the final product. The saw is not the final product. Your house or your fence or a statue, whatever it is you're building, that's the final product. Just like for us, our final product is our images. But if you don't master your tools, you are handicapping yourself, right? We've all bought tools. I know to the men in the audience for sure. We've all bought a saw. We've all bought something. You didn't read the owner's manual. And you're handicapped on your ability to use that particular tool. Well, it's no different for our cameras.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I take out my own system cameras, everything is very fluid. I have everything set up, and like you said, master your gear. But a lot of times I'll take a different. Like I bought a Pentax monochrome, just because I did. But yeah, I was fumbling with it because I didn't know, and I missed shots and all of that. So definitely knowing your gear will definitely make a big difference in your photography. Being able to just fluidly change things, set up things in your custom modes, and get out there and capture that image that you intend to capture. Um, I want to ask you. I guess this is something for me. That I tell people a lot that the image stabilization is not critical when we're talking about birds in flight because you're at shutter speeds of 1/2000, 1/4000. You can turn the shutter image stabilization off. I didn't notice any difference, but you have a lot more experience than I do. I'm just preaching from the very limited years I have with OM systems. What say you about the image stabilization in your nature and wildlife photography?
I always leave it on, and here's why. And I leave it on auto unless I'm doing intentional painting, right? Intentional blurs where I'm painting. And then I change it to that mode, which I think is 2, if I remember correctly. This is one of those do as I say, don't necessarily do as I do. Okay.
Okay.
The number one problem out in the field for almost all my clients, number one, besides not knowing their gear, number one problem, their shutters for wildlife photography in particular, their shutter speed's too slow because they're afraid of high ISO. Number one problem, hands down. Okay. So one of the things I teach, whether it's in my mentorship program, a workshop, online, YouTube, because let's face it, I'm 56 and I am generally the young pup in my workshops. Generally, not always, but generally. Okay. Most people overestimate their ability to handhold a camera. Most people, far and away, most. Okay. I challenge people for a while on your wildlife photography. Don't go below 1/2500th of a second, just for a while, for a few months, and tell me if your photography doesn't improve, because it will. I guarantee it. I've never had anybody tell me that their photography didn't get better. Okay, if they did that for a while. And then what you can do is begin to experiment with what shutter speed can you occasionally get away with for perched wildlife, or seated or standing or not flying, no action. Okay. And image stabilization, I know I can regularly drop to 1/80th, 1/60th a second at 1000 millimeters on the big white lens. No problem, assuming the subject is still. The problem with trying to push and get away with slower shutter speeds is what if action happens? Well, if I am pushing my shutter speed lower, it's because I'm in a situation where I don't believe that's going to happen. Okay. The problem for most photographers is they do that and then just leave it there, and they're not in situations where there may not be action. So if I have a wolf pack coming along, I'm not going to try to get away with something, even if one temporarily stops and gives me a good portrait, you know, the nice 5-degree head tilt looking at me, whatever. I'm not going to worry about getting away with slower shutter speed, because what if it starts trotting? Learning to assess, and this is Fieldcraft, which is the least talked about topic in photography, because unfortunately talking about gear gets more views in YouTube videos than talking about Fieldcraft. But Fieldcraft's way more important. Tells you, no, don't try to get away with it. Okay. Plus, if we lined up 10 different photographers, the slowest shutter speed they could get away with will probably vary from one photographer to the next. You need to develop your own internal database of what you can handhold the 7-14, right? A wide angle lens. What can you get away with a medium telephoto, and what can you get away with your longest wildlife lens? That's going to vary, right, from one person to another. I started doing yoga and doing some dumbbell workouts. I used to lift heavy. I don't, because I don't want to get injured or I can't work. So I know what I can handhold my gear at. I know what. I have a client named Terry from El Paso. She's a wonderful, sweet woman. She does not have a fraction of the strength I have, so she can't do the same thing, and that's okay. Being honest about our limitations physically will help our photography get better, to be honest. So yes, I leave it on because I never know when I may or may not make adjustments. I've never had a problem with leaving it on, but I think for a lot of photographers, you're right. If you're going to be up above 12500, it's not as important. But I will, like, say I drop down laying down on a beach and I've got perch birds, I may for a moment really slow that shutter speed down for a creative purpose, for an ISO, whatever it might be. But I never allow high ISO to affect my photography, because with modern technology, with DxO Pure Raw or Topaz Photo AI, even Lightroom's Enhance, it's no longer an issue. So if you're not shooting at a certain ISO because of that, then you need to learn why that is no longer a concern.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I can't tell you how many times I've told people, you know, get over it. Get over it. You know, you don't need to buy the f2.8. You know, just start with the 75 to 300 kit lens and learn to shoot at, you know, at the shutter speeds you need to shoot at, and don't worry about the ISO.
You can, if you start with a sharp shot, don't crop the crap out of it. Although I did a video about, can you crop a high ISO OM system image, and yes, you can.
Yeah,
but you got to do certain things. You got to expose the right, start with a sharp shot. You got to know post-processing. You know, when I designed my mentorship program, I have part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1, master your gear, master your photography. That's all about mastering the OM1 and the OM1 Mark II. Part 2 is Fieldcraft. That is going to be very video intensive. I got to hire someone to video me. It's going to take a lot to get that one together. That's master your Fieldcraft, master your photography, because that's the number one weakness amongst most photographers. And part 3 is master your post-processing. When I judge photo contests, I have seen some shots that I thought, oh my God, if this person knew post-processing, this would be phenomenal. Like, I just want to edit the photo for them, because I'm like, oh, they have no idea what they've left off on the table. Yeah. Those 3 areas require mastering it. And the fun about what we do, Rob, is that that's a lifelong process. You never get there. I'm not there. There's always something else to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I see that a lot myself too. I'm like, man, this is a great shot. I wish you would have just done this.
Yes.
Anyhow, you've mentioned a few apps that you use like at home for post-processing, but are there any apps like, popular one is Photo Pills, but are there any apps that you use in the field and things like that?
Yes. Yes. Sky Safari Pro is outstanding for night sky stuff. Planning, seeing what's coming ahead. The Pro costs something, but it gives you some alerts that others won't. Another favorite for both landscape and night sky is called Clear Outside. Clear
Mm,
Outside. Phenomenal
okay.
app for forecasting cloud cover, low, medium, and high. And I don't require completely clear skies from a night photography. I sometimes get bored, no matter how good a foreground is, of completely clear night skies.
Yeah.
I sometimes like a little cloud movement in my night sky photography. That one's really good. The Moon, the Moon. Some of these
Hmm.
do the same things, but some of them illustrate certain things in different ways. That one is a particular favorite. A simple one that I love is just called lightning. You can set up a 250-mile radius circle around you and get alerts whenever lightning strikes. And I love photographing lightning. So that one will give me different lightning alerts based on a 250-mile radius. You can pick whatever point, and then I know, ooh, I should be paying attention. Maybe I want to go chase it. That one I find very helpful.
Wow.
Tide Track, Tidetrac, all one word. If you're going to photograph shoreline, whether it be wildlife, landscape, and you need to know high or low tide, um, that's a great one. Tide Track really helps me a lot. Then there's one called Windy App. Where I live, we get a lot of very heavy winds. Let's say you're going to do macro photography outside, not in a white box or inside. It's called windy.app. That one is
Hmm.
great. Wind direction, wind, is it atmospheric? Is it high level winds? Is it low level? And giving you forecast for winds. That one I find to be really good. Um, I don't use my birding apps as much as I used to, except for if you're in a place, listen, let's talk ethics for a minute. Most people way overdue calling, pitching, calling. If a bird doesn't respond pretty quick, it's normally not going to. So if you're going to use bird calls, I've seen people do that in national parks. Guys, that is illegal. Stop it. Those are places where they're going to get overdone anyways, and the birds aren't going to respond. Okay. So learn better fieldcraft instead of relying on things that and I am, if you know me, I'm not a lecturer about ethics. I prefer to teach it in the field than lecturing other people. I will yell at someone if they're doing something completely inappropriate. I've done that in a few national parks. Generally, not people in my group, generally tour-ons, right? Um, but those, let's see here, for travel, uh, I like Flight Tracker, believe it or not. If you want the better version, you got to subscribe. But if you want to know things that are going on about flights, Flight Tracker is a really really good one. I use that quite a bit, particularly for tracking my clients. Uh, what's happening with them. I find that one to work really well. Other great photo apps that I like to use. Let me try to think, man. That's a great question. I
Well,
use.
if everyone has their phone with them all the time and they use these things, I never heard of a bird calling app until you just mentioned it, and I'm not going to bother with them. As you say, it doesn't make sense.
The
Uh,
Merlin Bird ID is probably the better one if you want one to use. Merlin Bird ID is the
mm,
best.
yeah, I've heard of that one, but
That's probably
okay,
the best one to
that's a
use.
good list. We can start there, unless something just pops out at you. But
Yeah,
yeah, I hadn't heard of all but maybe two or three of these. Uh, I've heard of Merlin and Sky Safari, but not anything else here. That's amazing.
yeah.
Uh, so you use these apps and you've talked about things at home. Are there, other than like photo editing software, you like DxO and the other stuff, but Is there any kind of online or website that you might use to prep or get ready for going out?
I love Google Maps. I do. I use Google Maps. When I was younger, Rob, I didn't have the finances to pay a guide to help me. And I used to think that was a waste when I was younger because I went and found everything on my own. But you know what? As I got older, and guys, I recognize not everybody has the funds to hire guides. Why do I want to waste time researching an area if I can afford? Okay, that's the preface. If you can afford a guide somewhere, you absolutely should. And here's why I learned this. So I know Big Bend National Park like the back of my hand. If you've seen the PBS special, uh, Big Bend, the Wild Frontier, Texas, I was the wildlife consultant. I found almost every wildlife you see in there. Some of it was filmed right back here in my backyard. I mean, I know Big Bend. It is a massive national park. Massive. If you go there for 3 days, you aren't even scratching the surface of this national park. I know the great photo spots. And if you're coming from Canada, you're coming from the East Coast, the West Coast, you've never been there, you can waste so much time driving. People underestimate how far it is out there. And the speed limit in the park is 45, so it can take a while. Hire somebody who knows that area. If I'm going to a place I've never been before and I can afford it, I am 100% going to hire a local person. However, this is a challenge. If you're going to go do bird and wildlife photography and you hire a birding guide, you need to be adamant that this is not about seeing the maximum number of species. The problem is they don't always understand light direction, light angles. If you can hire a local photography guide, you are way better than hiring a local birding guide or a typical tourist guide. Okay. A
Interesting.
birding guide is going to, you may just have to beat it into it. If you can't find a local photography guide, you need to let them know what you're there for. It is critical. Okay. If there, I've had people hire me. I used to do birding tours, no more because birders drive me nuts. And if you are a birder and a photographer, you need to understand that you are challenging yourself to get great images because most of them are not patient enough. I know this because I was a photographer. I became a birder. I set my camera down. And one day I said, oh my God, I've been on the Pribilof Islands and I didn't even take my camera. And I picked my camera back up and I've quit birding. I am an excellent birder. I know how to identify birds. I am not a birder based on modern definitions of birding. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I'm a photographer first and foremost. Okay. So hire guides wisely. You can really mess yourself up on what you want to accomplish by hiring the wrong guide or sometimes going cheap. And I recognize if you may not have the funds. If you have the funds, there's no excuse. I recognize sometimes you're on a budget, and so please, I'm not judging
Yeah.
you.
No,
I
I
mean,
get it, but
most
I
of my
think
life,
it's also a bigger conversation about investing in yourself, and a
yes,
guide would
yes.
be sort of along those lines because what he's telling you is not something you buy off the shelf,
No,
right?
no, 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 no. That's
So
right.
that's
That's
really
right.
investing in yourself, and I do want to, uh, if you have some images, I'd like, I know you put together a small gallery. If you could put up a couple, what I want to kind of lead into here is what you're talking about now is like, what's your process of finding and approaching wildlife or landscapes? And maybe you can give some tips along the way. How did you compose these images? What were you thinking about? And then, your patience, persistence, and if there's anything about ethics there that you want to mention, you can bring that in. But if you could share some of those images, because they're really quite stunning,
Thank you, bud.
get
Thank you.
into
Yes.
about nature and wildlife and finding subjects, fieldcraft to some degree. That would be really helpful, I think.
Okay. Okay. Let me get one open here and share my screen. Share entire screen. Let's see here. All right. How's that looking, Rob? There we go.
Very good.
Okay. So Here's a great lesson for a lot of y'all out there. Quite often, the most popular times at national parks or destination is often the worst time for photography. Perfect example, Big Bend National Park. I love summertime out here. When I lived in Central Texas, Central Oklahoma, I hated summer. The humidity, oh God, I don't know how anybody lives east of the 100th meridian. I can go there to photograph, but living in humidity and mosquitoes, hell no. I'm over it. The reason I didn't live out west in dry climate before is because I was married to people that wouldn't do it. But I have that freedom. Well, everybody thinks it's hot. Okay, out here in West Texas. Yeah, it might get to 90 sometimes, might get to 100, but I will take 100 in Big Bend over 80 in DC in August, any day of the week and twice on Sunday. Okay. And the skies, I can pretty much guarantee you every day in July and August, we can do some amazing black and white landscape. In the afternoon, the clouds are going to build. And if we're lucky, which is much of the time, we're going to get some great skies. Okay. So there's almost no tourists. I can often stop my car in the middle of the road and get out. And I'm laughing to myself because they all think it's awful, but they're all coming in March, which utterly sucks for landscape photography. It's great for night sky because the skies are clear and the Milky Way's low in the sky. But it often gets very cold at night, and they don't realize that because they think they're coming to the desert and it's hot year round. Every month is very different in Big Bend. And if you say, I've had people contact me for March landscape workshops. I go, listen, I will take your money. I will take you out. I am going to be horribly bored for landscapes because it's going to be generally boring. It's going to suck. I'm going to regret even going out, but I will take your money and we will go out. But if you want to come out and see me stoked for skies, come with me in July and August, and we're going to tear it up most of the time. Okay. So when you're doing your research, just because a lot of people go somewhere and do something, never underestimate the power of groupthink combined with group stupidity. Okay. Just because a lot of people do something does not mean that's the best for photography. For example, planning a trip to the Galapagos Islands, a lot of people want to look at, here's another nice landscape from summer in Big Bend, right? A lot of people, when they go to the Galapagos, let me go to my Galapagos folder here. They are often looking, let's find a fun image here. Oh, what's a fun one, Rob? I love doing certain things in the Galapagos. Oh, here we go. This is why you should always keep your ISO up when there's no light, because you never know what action is going to come, right? The Galapagos are a lot cheaper at a certain time of year because it's hot as hell. There's no breeze and there's mosquitoes. If you don't want to pay extra to join a photo tour, you're often going to end up missing out a lot. I have watched people go to the Galapagos and stand. Once they got on shore, I saw a guy with the big wide OM system lens. His group stood around the local guide for an hour on the beach. We'd already been on the beach an hour and a half. Listen, and I walked up and whispered his ear. I said, hey, if you ever want to come to Galapagos and actually take photos, come with me next time. Plan your trips wisely. If you go with Nat Geo, Lindblad to the Galapagos, you're getting screwed because we're on the island an hour and a half to 2 hours before they come on. I only take 14. They take 80. They have the same amount of time on the island as we do. So that means they got to run people through. Now, here's a high ISO OM system image. Looks pretty daggum sharp, doesn't it, Rob?
Yeah.
My shutter speed is up high enough. I call this my dragon penguin pose, right? Guys, I'm shooting from a Panga or a Zodiac. When you're shooting from a moving boat with rocking waves and other people, I will shoot at SH2 if the light's high enough to be at ISO 12,800 or below, or silent sequential at 20 frames per second if I have to be above ISO 12.8. That's the limitation. Shoot lots of shots. Your boat is rocking no matter how good you are at holding your camera still, just from the rocking movement and other people moving. You're going to have images that are blurry due to boat movement. You're going to have images where the composition's off because the boat's rocking. You need to know the times where being photo scarce is not smart. Okay. I will shoot from moving safari vehicles. I will shoot from moving boats, but I adjust my Fieldcraft accordingly. Okay. Let's talk about composition, or let's talk about tough light. A lot of times people avoid tough light. This is pretty harsh light, but I actually love this shot. But notice how low I am. The teeth make this shot, and this is a bit of an intimidating shot, even though the light is harsh, right? You can shoot in harsh light when you understand what you're going for. So learning to read and chase natural light is critical, because in every single situation, natural light can come into play in different ways. For example, here are two images I love. I love two species shots. Now, what are the odds I get a swallow with a Yakari caiman in the same shot? That's pretty tough to pull off, right? Here's another one. But high ISO combined with a fast shutter speed. I mean, what are the odds I can plan for that swallow to be with a Yakari caiman whose mouth is agape and the bird is in the proper spot for the composition to work? Because Rob, you've heard me say I crop less than 1% of my images. Do I creatively? So learning to use natural light and get you awesome shots is something that's very important. Here in Brazil, this is a little bit brighter light, but with a little bit of overcast, right? I love it. I get a little bit of a shadow here to give you some dimension, but not enough harsh light to cause it to be, washed out or ugly. So when you're out shooting, guys, whether you're going to be in, tough. Whoops, hold on. Let me get down here. Sorry, guys. I know. Looking at. Sorry, I thought that was that one was a different one. Let me pop. So another time, I don't mind harsh light is shooting down on birds from a cliff, because it lights up the dorsal surface of the bird. So if you've got midday light, this is in Kauai, Hawaii, where the wildlife refuge doesn't even open until 10 a.m. Well, fortunately, you're often shooting down on subjects where you have some control. I love doing macro in a white box where I have complete control of the lighting. I have complete control of the background. And it's awesome for shooting some challenging subjects. I don't know if anybody's ever photographed tiger beetles, but tiger beetles can move so quickly that when they stop, they have to allow their eyesight to readjust. Okay. That's how fast they move. So why would I bring a beetle that moves that fast into my house? Well, I'm going to create a natural setup, and I'm going to put a container over the beetle until it settles. I'm going to lift that container very slowly, making sure not to breathe directly on the beetle. This setup, Rob, here's a little tip if you like to do macro inside. This setup is on a Lazy Susan. So I don't have to worry about if the subject moves a little bit. I don't have to worry about moving the subject. I can reach down with my left hand and slowly spin to put my subject in where I want it.
That's cool.
So, and they sell different size Lazy Susans.
Right.
I buy different size acrylic containers. The container store is your friend here. I buy different size containers and different size Lazy Susans to build my little setup in. Then I can spin it gently without suddenly jarring it and spooking my subject. That's Fieldcraft, and that is knowing the subjects, right, that you're going to work with. Let's talk about photographing flocks or herds, okay? I normally, when I'm doing birds and wildlife, I normally like to leave all, for the OM1, I leave all autofocus points on. For the OM1 Mark II, the engineers tell me I shouldn't use all, so I create a custom focus box that is almost the full screen, but not complete. However, if we're going to be you ever see people show shots of flocks, but your eye doesn't start somewhere, or herds? If there's, for me, if there's not a focal point for your eye to start, I find those images a bit discombobulating.
Yeah.
So when I'm going to photograph large takeoffs or flocks or herds, I actually will switch to a small autofocus point, and I will put it in the frame roughly where I want the focus point of the image to be. So in this image, it's here, the rule of thirds on the upper. So if you'll notice, these two Snokies are the sharpest, right? So my eye starts here, and then it somewhat follows the golden spiral. You see that circle of sharpness? Just because there's a lot of stuff happening does not mean it's a good shot. Ask yourself, where does your eye start in that image? And if your eye just wanders over it with no place to settle, I don't particularly find those images of flocks or herds very satisfying. Somebody else may, that's okay, but I don't. So when you're photographing a herd or a flock in action or still, you still want to try to control where the viewer's eye begins and ends. Okay. So
wow.
Okay. I normally don't like man-made subjects in my images. Normally, this is Big Bend. It was a heavy, foggy morning, very foggy morning, and I saw this composition. Well, this composition was impossible to shoot without the sidewalk, without clipping the tree. But I still like this shot. So occasionally, you just can't get around it, But for me, that's something I enjoy doing. This is an image in clients who aren't patient. Okay, this was the best. Now, here's another example of Fieldcraft, Rob, in a variety of ways. In Big Bend, we have a different species of bluebonnets in Central Texas. Everybody knows if you want to do bluebonnets in Texas, you generally come like late March, early April, that time. The bluebonnet species out here in Big Bend are different. They grow up to 4 feet tall. They start blooming in late December, and they are generally done by March. This is early to mid-March. And it was the best bloom I'd seen in my lifetime in Big Bend in this particular area. And Mule Ears Peak is this caldera back here that collapsed, resulting in a peak that looks like mule ears. And at this time of year, the sun, depending on where you're standing, will come right up behind it. So we have this really nice area of Big Bend bluebonnets, great clouds. And March, great clouds are not that common, right? Remember me saying March sucks usually?
Right.
And we are shooting this, and I mean, I am so stoked. And after about an hour, he says, well, let's go look for some birds. And I said, wait, I can show you those birds anytime. You don't want to keep working this scene? No, I think I've got this. Yeah. Inside, I died a little.
Yeah.
But my job as a guide was to go get the client what he wanted. And I mean, I was like, obviously my photography is secondary to clients when I have a client with me. Had I been myself, I would have stayed here and worked this for a very long time. But that's not the case. I could. But that is knowing when you have something in front of you, like a cooperative subject, like certain tiger beetles, I just won't even try to work if I'm out in the wild where I can't, put them in a container and let them settle. When you have subjects that normally aren't cooperative, but you come across one, work it. Work the light. Work different angles. Work different lenses, whatever. Every now and then you come across like a subject of something that is normally not cooperative. And if it's being cooperative, work it, exhaust it, because how long before you might get that again, right?
Yeah.
Or a certain flower or whatever it might be, you know. Uh, Whenever you're trying to do wildlife photography, I love low light conditions because then I can get certain shots that I'm not going to get at other times of year. I'm sorry, other times of day. If you're doing intentional blurs, you need thousands of shots probably to get one or two that you really like. Don't get frugal. By God, don't chimp to see if you got one. Keep shooting because certain conditions are not going to last long. Okay. I wish I could remember what photography friend said this, but because I would accredit them. This is not my original saying, but they said most photographers show up too late and they leave too early. This is one of the most popular sunset spots. It's not good for sunrise because the sun is behind the Chisos Mountains for sunrise. But I see people come here at sunrise. I'm like, oh my God, it's the sun doesn't even get above the mountains until the light's too harsh. But for sunset,
Right.
the Soto Vista Overlook. Okay. And this is well after actual sunset when the sun drops behind the mountains there in Mexico. So if you see this gap, this is Santa Elena Canyon, right? So you have the US on the right and Mexico on the left. So when the sun drops behind the mountains, then the light can hit the bottom of the clouds. Normally, up until sunset at busy times of year, you might have in the winter 50 people here, 75, 100. That's busy for Big Bend in certain areas. Okay. At this time, I think we were down to 3 photographers, and that's when the best color happened.
Yeah.
So just because the sun has set, you need to give it time for it to play out. Okay. So, and again, here you see now I'm on a tripod. This is not handheld, but here you see another panoramic lens. Here's kind of my guideline for wide angle versus long lens panoramics. If the sky can carry the scene, then I like to pull out a wide angle. Or if I am super close to a large subject, so I don't diminish its size, then I'm thinking wide angle. If I've got a great sky, but the sky alone is not going to carry the scene, or my big subject is a long ways away, then I'm going to pull out a long lens and do a long lens. Here's a single long lens shot. Remember that mule ears? So
Yeah.
this is a long lens landscape shot to pull me in close versus the wide angle. So here's the wide angle from a long ways away, but this was about my foreground, right?
Right.
Plus the background. So I needed the wide angle. Whereas for this shot of mule ears, this was all about the sun directly above. By the way, this is the same day as the image I just showed you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
pulled out the long lens to capture that, So I think sometimes in landscapes, you got to work quick. So I had a client with me, and these God rays started out way to the right of Goat Mountain here. Kit Peak and Goat Mountain are the 2 mountains in front of us. And she started asking questions and started to change lenses. I said, my God, man, just shoot. That's the tattoo on my right hand. Just shoot. Just shoot. Because that light was going to be on those 2 peaks for maybe a minute to a minute and a half. I shot long lens. I had a remote in one hand using one camera setup, and I was shooting with my other hand with another setup because I knew that light was fleeting and momentary. So those are some Fieldcraft tips that I think would be good for people to understand how specific we have to be for wildlife, macro, landscape, night sky, and be thinking on our feet constantly and ready
Yeah.
to adapt to moments that are fleeting.
Wow. Wow. That was a lot. I mean, it really comes down to a lot, like you were saying, in the planning that we talked about before, knowing the subject. I've never thought about landscapes as being a cooperative subject. I always think about wildlife, right? But landscapes, when the light is perfect and it's, you got a half an hour to capture that, go ahead. Take advantage of that. Don't just move on. But then
No,
there's times like in the last shot where the light is fleeting and you want to act as fast and shoot as much as you can in that short amount of time.
you
So,
have to
yeah.
you know what happens, Rob?
Mm,
Photographers think too much in terms of documenting something, right?
mhm,
Instead of like if you can learn to read natural light as it's moving across the sky. I've watched photographers photograph. I go, why are you photographing now? Light sucks, but you see that cloud right there? In 30 minutes, this is the shot. This is the
mm,
shot. I was doing a workshop in Big Bend, and we'd been at Mule Ears. We'd been in the parking area. Those two shots were from a long ways away from the parking area, completely different spot. But there's a parking area where you can get great shots. And storms were building, man. And we had great skies, and we'd been there about an hour. And there's a phrase, I think I've shared it with you before, that I absolutely hate in the field. And there's several of them I absolutely hate, but one of them is when your impatient photographer says, I think I got that. What a dumbass statement. Oh my God, I hate that statement. I hate
yeah,
everything that statement represents. That's your passive aggressive person trying to get the rest of the group to move on, but they're not going to say, I'm ready to go, because that's rude. They think they're not being rude by saying, I got that. I know what that means. I taught personality types for a decade or more. I know what that means. Okay. But the group as a whole, I could tell, was getting antsy because we'd been there an hour. But I think a rainbow was going to form. Okay.
mhm,
And I could tell that they were getting antsy. And
yeah.
I don't know if I have this picture in here. I could tell. And they said, well, should we move on? And finally I said, well, it's y'all's tour. That is my way of saying we're going to do something dumb, but it is your tour, so we will move on. So we went to the vehicles, and right about the point where we're all folding up. Yeah, here we go. Right about the point we're all folding up our tripods, I look up and I see this. Okay. Now, Rob, to give you an idea
Sure.
how big, yeah, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Right when we're putting up, I see this unfold. Now, to give you an idea, before you see this image, this is a pano at 16 millimeters. This is how big this is. Okay, this is how
Wow.
big this rainbow is. Okay, here we go. That is a
Wow.
pano. Now, that is a massive, and there's a little bit of a double rainbow. You see that?
Yeah.
Had they been patient, they wouldn't have been scrambling to get all their crap back out of their car. Okay. So what we saw at first, oops, hold on, let me get this one big. That's the rainbow we saw at first. After 20 minutes, we got the giant one when I convinced them to just wait it out. One of the worst things for a lot of people is the belief that there's always something good somewhere else. I see this all the time. People leave great cooperative subjects and great scenes to go look for something else. Why? Work it. You may never get it again. I've had some winter in Yellowstone workshops where I've had 8 coyotes in a day. I've had some where we didn't have any in a day. So I've had people get bored of, why are we stopping for another coyote? Oh my gosh. If it's in beautiful light, now if it's crappy light, we might not stop, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a rare bird photographer. I'm not a first time I've seen it photographer. I'm not a documentary photographer. I will leave documenting crap up to the AP. That I'm not here to document stuff. I'm here to capture visually compelling images. So, and you know what? If you're a documentary photographer and that's what you want to do and you want to post your stuff on iNat, I don't care. Have a ball. But you're paying me too much money to teach you how to do documentary shot. What I teach you will work for that, but I want to teach you how to capture visually compelling images and to do it correctly
Yeah.
from the beginning.
Yeah, and that's definitely definitely one of my personal goals. I feel like more on the documentary side. It's not my goal, but that's when I look at my own photography, I always think, yeah, anybody could see that or could take that picture. I just know the camera well, so I got it sharp and focus. You know, I recognize lighting and depth and basic composition, but I never get those like epic shots, the visually compelling, as you put it. And that's always been my goal, and I still strive for that. And you've definitely given a lot of tips here to think about with the planning, working with a cooperative subject, patience, persistence. All these things are really important. The fieldcraft, I guess, is the broader term for that.
That's right. That's right.
Uh,
My
and
definition of fieldcraft, Rob, here's my
mhm,
definition. It is the art and science of approaching a subject or scene. I'm sorry, I left part out. It is the art and science of assessing and approaching a subject or scene.
mhm,
That's fieldcraft. It's both art
yeah,
and science. Art, there's science about certain animal behavior, but there's also art involved in recognizing when it may or may not occur.
yeah. And it's funny. The first time I heard the term fieldcraft, it's like a year ago.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had no idea what pe- when because somebody was being really critical of my photography, which my channel's not about my photography. It's about trying to learn your gear and
Yes.
stuff. But uh, someone was really critical. I'm like, and they were talking about fieldcraft, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I honestly, honest to God, I thought he was talking about like a fishing boat or something. Because I
You
think
know,
of a
Rob.
craft as a boat. Sometimes people refer to their boats like their craft, and they're talking about a field craft. And I was like, "Are you talking about a fishing boat? What are you talking about? Getting close to your subject?" And I'm like, because I was cropping the hell out of my bird images and whatever. It wasn't about that, my that particular video, but I was, So anyway, so I really appreciate putting all of this into context and showing images that sort of illustrate how important fieldcraft is. Because one thing I have always said is that your skill set will always outweigh the camera, right? Meaning a good photographer
Exactly.
is a good photographer, and the gear is not that important.
You know what's
Photography and gear are two separate subjects.
That's here you go. I'm glad you said that. You made me think of this. Great gear will never make up for crappy fieldcraft. You can buy the
Yeah.
most expensive gear out there, and if your fieldcraft sucks, I often say just because an image is properly exposed and sharp doesn't mean it doesn't suck. I've seen a lot of crappy ass
Yeah,
images.
look at my Instagram. It sucks.
No, you, no, I don't, Rob. No, no, Rob. You're one of the least. You're one of the most unassuming people. You're one of the least
No, no, the images
self-promoting.
are
No, no,
sharp
you're a great.
usually, but that's about it.
No, no. Listen, man. I can tell you, having great fieldcraft will change people's photography almost overnight. The thing is, you don't gain this knowledge overnight. You can start working on it, but people get caught up in the moment and don't think about it. They just go charging straight at something. I mean, watch Turons of Yellowstone social media and you'll see that real quick. Great fieldcraft keeps you and the subject safer. Great fieldcraft allows you to work with dangerous animals and venomous snakes. And great fieldcraft teaches you how to relight and to be in the right spot. Being in the right spot is not luck. It may be for some people, but being in the right spot is more about fieldcraft than anything else. So I want to encourage everybody out there, quit watching so many videos about gear. And I shouldn't say it, but watch more videos about fieldcraft. Learn the difference. Beetles, there's over 100,000 species of beetles in the world. You don't approach every beetle the same way to photograph it. You can't. That it doesn't work. Recognizing some beetle species that at that time of day I can't even photograph it really. Um,
Yeah.
Learning that will help you tremendously. So, and again, Rob, that's what I've said before is the beauty of this is I will never master all of it. It's a constant pursuit of
Yeah.
knowledge. knowing that venomous snakes vary dramatically in one species to another. Just here in West Texas, I can't approach a Mojave rattlesnake, a prairie rattlesnake, a western diamondback rattlesnake, a rock rattlesnake, and a black-tailed rattlesnake. I can't approach them all the same. They're different species, and I have to know that. Out here, blacktails are one of the bigger ones. They're like puppy dogs. They're one of the calmest snakes you'll ever work with. But, prairie rattlesnakes are not calm because they evolve and live in wide open country. So I have to know that I cannot approach those two snakes the exact same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just stepping back just a little bit, that we kind of brought up another thing that may have been in my last stream with the other ambassadors about part of learning fieldcraft really is you have to have a curiosity, right? In photography. Like I learned about water bugs and dragonflies because I was curious about them. But now, so when I got back home, I watched all kinds of videos and documentaries about these two insects, and I learned a lot about them. And now I have a little better idea next time I go out and photograph what to photograph to get that more interesting image about a dragonfly. Like the dragonfly is just sitting on a branch, which is common, and those are great shots. But if you can get a dragonfly actually, flying backwards in a way, right? Or, turning upside down and doing things that no other flying bug can do.
Mm-hmm.
These are the shots that will be more epic or more interesting. And, I think I haven't done it yet myself, but I know what to look for, right? When I'm shooting dragonflies and water bugs and other things. It's that curiosity. So you have to have a curiosity. If you're not a curious person, then you'll probably never learn fieldcraft.
No. Rob, my parents were both teachers, educators. My grandfather was a professor. So in education was very important in our family. I have 3 degrees. And this is the biggest problem with the modern education system from pre-K until PhDs. It drives curiosity out of most people. It does not encourage curiosity. And I find that some of the most boring people in the world I've ever met, and I'm bluntly honest, I've met a lot of boring people, lack intellectual curiosity. Now, we don't all have to be curious about the same thing, but if you're going to be a nature photographer, you know how I know the most boring people in the world when it comes to nature photography? They're the ones who come up to me at festivals, events, camera store events, whatever it might be. And they say, do you teach in your workshop? And I say, well, of course. And they go, well, we don't need it. I immediately think, thank God, don't come on my workshops. You would bore the hell out of me. You're useless, you're egotistical. And if somebody in this crowd has said that, don't say it again. You're revealing that you're awful, boring, useless. So curiosity, this will surprise some of y'all. I was a church planner. I started church from scratch. There you go. I'll let that settle in for a minute. And one time a mother of a woman came to our church to visit, and we were a very unique church, as you might imagine. And she leaned over to her daughter and said, this church will always be fun and growing because that man will not grow up. What she meant was my curiosity and my mindset, I try to keep it like, have you ever been around a really fun 8-year-old whose parents have encouraged them to be curious and you take them outdoors or to a zoo? That's how I want to live my life. That's not immaturity. That's not immaturity. That curiosity of a brilliant, not brilliant, of a they will be brilliant if they're curious, but of a, and it can be mechanics, it can be math, it can be poetry, it can be music. But in our field, we're talking about photography and wildlife and landscapes. When I see, and this is the field we're talking about right now, if you aren't curious about your gear, if you're not curious about light, if you're not curious about lizards, if you're not curious about the night sky, you're not going to be a great nature photographer. So, we didn't talk about curiosity, but I think that is one of the most critical things. You remember my formula for nature photography success, Rob? Preparation plus skill times patience equals luck. That's my formula for nature photography success. Preparation and skill, I should probably put in parentheses above both of those, curiosity. Because if you're not curious, you won't develop either of those two things. So I need you guys out there to be curious about, like I don't photograph flowers by themselves up close. I don't have an eye for that. Elise Bender, that Tamron ambassador I mentioned earlier, she's great at that. I want a bug on my flower or a landscape shot of flowers. I want a bug or a frog. I want something on my flower to photograph it. That's just me. That's what I'm curious about. But whatever it is that your interest is, be curious about it. Buy books about it. Watch videos about it. However you learn, just go walk. I have 18 acres up here with my own cliff. I go scrambling on my cliff. People say, isn't that dangerous? Probably, but I don't care. I'd rather die on my cliff doing what I love than die of a heart attack sitting in my chair watching some reality show, right? So be curious about what's around you, and your photography will improve. Because being curious, here's the problem about birding versus watching wildlife. A birder sees it, they check it, and they move on without necessarily observing, or not all, but a lot, right? They're collecting checks. And listen, I did for a while too. I'm not judging anybody. I'm telling you what I had to overcome to become a better photographer. But when you find a bird, sit and observe it. Just watch how it behaves, because there's a world of difference in a LeConte sparrow, and there's a world of difference in an olive-sided flycatcher. To photograph an olive-sided flycatcher, because they perch almost always on top of the very top of a tree, you need a trail on a slope where the top of that tree can be at eye level. Otherwise, it's just an upskirt shot of a olive-sided flycatcher, because they're almost always up at the top, like a northern hawk owl, right? So if I can find a slope that will put me eye level, that's how I'm going to get a better shot of an olive-sided flycatcher. A LeConte sparrow is normally going to run through tall grass in winter in central Texas like a mouse. You're going to, if you get lucky enough for one to hop up on a perch, like a branch of an old, a dried flower, shoot the crap out of it. Don't chimp. Shoot it, bam, 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 till it's gone, because that isn't happening again probably for you in a long time.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense, because there are some birds that don't really come up. They're always scurrying on the ground. I'm like,
when
why?
we talk
Why?
about habitat,
Yeah.
Rob, when beginning photographers ignore habitat as much as anything, but there's also altitudinal habitat. How high do birds tend to pursue their life? Some stay almost exclusively on the ground. Some are mid-story. Some are upper story. Some are sky. You've got to also learn elevational or altitudinal habitat. And I'm not talking the top of mountains or a desert, low desert. I'm talking within this, the from the ground up.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I just never thought about these kind of things, because it's there's always something new, as you say. We're always learning something new, and you've really provided a lot of interesting or new ideas and new things that I never considered.
It
I
helps
mean,
being
there's something.
ADHD and OCD.
Yeah. As you can tell, and as my viewers know, I'm very laid back, and I just
You
kind of
are.
take things casually. But I do like to think about things and take things seriously. And behind the scenes, I practice a lot of these things, but I rarely can deliver, so I don't talk about them too much. But I try. I try.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are some great tips. And I think one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because you offer your mentorship programs, and we'll do an open Q&A here in just a moment, but you mentioned earlier about some mentorship programs that you're putting together, that you're working on, that you need a camera guy. But what do you have right now that you do? Because you say you host field trips and things too. But tell me a little bit about the business side of you. That
Yeah.
if people like what they
And I've been a professional photographer. Okay. if I look at every stage of my life going all the way, I played sports, I've had coaches, professors, all of the significant impacts in my life where someone said something, did something, shaped me, that made dramatic alterations in the course of my life. It was always through a mentor. Clint Anderson, who at one point was the lead trainer for Devon Oil Company. He was a great friend. He was a mentor for me for, 11 years. I mean, he's still an amazing man. Dramatically changed my life, teaching me leading self, leading teams, leading organizations. I've had men and women in my life. Lisa Langell, from a photography standpoint, her customer service for her workshop participants is unmatched as far as I'm concerned, right? Greg Lasley, who's since passed, who taught me dragonfly photography, who's an amazing photographer here in the state of Texas. And I could go on and on and on with the men and women who've shaped me. But mentors in my life are the ones who had the best influence in terms of changing the track of my life. And after leading workshops for about 3 or 4 years, I kept noticing this pattern of people struggle with their cameras, no matter what brand, no matter where in the world I went, no matter how long they'd been photographing. And I saw this causing them to miss great shots. Well, I'm OCD. As I've said before, my friend says I'm CDO because it needs to be in alphabetical order, and I'm ADD. I don't know if I'm ADD. I don't care. The lady's going to be my thing. I have tons of hobbies. You see my fossils and my all my kind of stuff behind me. But I had to focus because I want to be the best at what I do. If I'm going to do it, I want to try to be the best. So I decided what would happen in my life, this was many years ago, if I mastered my gear. And then I saw in the field, very few people have. I'm the dork that reads an owner's manual 3 or 4 times to know something, okay? And I realized when you go on a 7-day or even a 14-day workshop, you learn a few things here and there on some workshops. Some professional photographers who do workshops suck as education. They're doing it, frankly, to get free trips. I mean, I'm just being honest. That's a lot of workshop leaders. I love to teach. I love to see people get better at their photography. But I noticed the number one obstacle was not knowing their gear. Well, I'm an OM system ambassador. I said, I wonder what would happen if I created a mentorship program. And so this actually came out of an outline for a book, but I can't sit still long enough to write a book. Yeah. So I had this outline, and it started from my formula, from that formula I gave you for nature photography success. And I thought, what are the 3 key areas of nature photography that if I were going to mentor you, what would that be based on my formula and this outline? And I realized it was mastering your gear, it was mastering Fieldcraft, and it's mastering post-processing. Those are the 3 most critical elements for the nature photography. And probably for the portrait guy, but I'm not a portrait guy. I'm that, right? So I took this outline for this book and I said, most people don't read anymore. Okay. My grandfather was a professor of reading, so I read, but let's face it, most people don't like to read anymore. So how can I make this the most effective? So I came up with a mentorship program. Part 1, master your gear, master your photography, or master your system. Part 2, master your Fieldcraft, master your photography, and Part 3, master your post-processing, master your photography. So I wrote Part 1 quite a while back, and I've now taken 3 groups. I only take 12 people because let's face it, I figure if Jesus can handle 12 people in a group, that's probably you know what I mean? Like, okay, that's a good sized group. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm on my 3rd group. I'm starting to sign up my 4th group. Everybody that's gone through it, and I charge less than a 1-week workshop. So for $4,000, you get a 6 to 9 month program where I mentor you in mastering your system. I think it's my most rewarding thing I've ever done in terms of photography because the improvement I see is so incredible. I love doing workshops. I love taking people out in the field, and I see them make some improvements. Particularly like my mastering bird and flight workshop, I hear the most about people improve their overall photography from that. But the mentorship program is designed to give you time, because, oh gosh, I almost never post in the unofficial OM System Ambassador Facebook page. Most of y'all probably don't even recognize me much from social media. I only post on my own page most of the time. Okay. But a guy posted there, and I couldn't let this pass. My smart ass side was too elevated that particular day. And he said, I'm getting rid of my own system gear and going back to whatever gear he had before. I've watched 4 hours of YouTube video and I can't figure this thing out. And I thought, my God, 4 hours of videos and you haven't mastered it? Shock. The audacity of OM System to put out a gear that you don't master in 4 hours. Who the hell masters anything in 4 hours, Rob? Are you kidding me? I had to bust his chops. I couldn't take it. And I'm sure some people thought I was mean. A lot of people said, yeah, Lee's right here, but I'm like, I don't care if you think I'm mean or not. It's true. If you think you're going to master something in 4 hours, you're utterly clueless. So I created a program to extend the time for you to have some reasonable expectation of truly getting to master your gear. Because if you don't master the dials and the buttons on this thing, the rest is a moot point, right?
Yeah.
So I got to thinking, because you can go buy a series on Lightroom for $100. You can go buy a series of videos on Lightroom for $100. And there might be a handful of people that actually master Lightroom from those videos. I suspect most people don't improve much from those videos because there's nobody guiding you along the way, right? So you're going to jump from video to video to answer the immediate problem in front of you. That's what I love about YouTube. If I need to fix an easy part on my Ram Rebel out there, some redneck has a 1:27 video on how to do it, and I can fix the immediate problem. But I am not a Ram Rebel mechanic. My God, that's the last thing. I haven't mastered anything about that truck other than driving it on off-roading. Okay. So watching an hour and 27 minute or an hour or a minute and 27 second video doesn't make me a master of anything, but I might solve an immediate problem. So how can I help you master your system? And this has been the most effective tool. So for $4,000 for 6 to 9 months, I walk you through that process through public Zoom, Zoom meetings of the group and private Zoom meetings with yourself. You have homework assignments, photo projects, basically, notes. So if I'm going to charge $4,000 for post-processing instead of $100, how does that look? And I have to tell you, the way it's coming together is so amazing. It's making me even rethink some of the things in part one that I already have done. So I've had registration opened up and I've already got, I think, 4 people on each because I only do 12 at a time. But I feel like when you get done, your post-processing abilities will be years advanced versus trying to do it on your own.
Yeah, definitely.
Is what I want.
Throughout, when it comes to education and life lessons and if you're an enthusiast in something, I've always heard, having a mentor is critical to growing in whatever it is you want to, pursue. So I think what you're doing is very important, and it's not cheap by no means. But on the one hand, what is cheap, right? What is an investment in yourself really worth? So.
Plus, a typical 7-day workshop is more than that. It's $500 to $7,500, right? So
it's all relative, and I think it's really a very small investment when it comes to your life pursuit of if you want to really get good at something, having a mentor, especially if you having all that. I mean, I just picked up probably $4,000 worth of advice right here in this stream.
Thank you.
I want to
thank you.
But it's not something everybody can do, but if you can, I think it's definitely worth the investment. I always say it's worth investing in yourself. God knows.
I got a great story about that. I have a client. She's gone with me all over. She's one of my most traveled clients with me in America. She doesn't like long flights, but goes with me all over. And for years, and I occasionally give a nickname to clients based on a certain patterns of behavior or other things they do. And her nickname was Job Security because she could never remember jack crap that I taught her, right? So she joked about it. She knew that because she would forget. Well, she went through part 1 of the mentorship program, and now I told her the other day, your nickname has to change because she doesn't forget it. She's mastered it, and her photography has skyrocketed in terms of the quality. She's winning her local photo contests all the time and getting in she's doing a lot of cool stuff. And I used to jokingly say, you are job security. Linda is her name. She wouldn't care if I told you. Linda Job Security. That was her nickname. But I joke, I still call her that, but it's not true anymore like it once was because she actually has mastered her system. And it's awesome to see. This is true. I hate seeing clients frustrated, missing shots because they don't know their system or they don't know post-processing or they don't know Fieldcraft. I get as aggravated as they are because I know they can overcome that. Okay. Because they've paid me. I'm one of those workshop guides. I put your needs first. I'll grab if I happen to be in the best line of sight, which hang out near your workshop leader. They generally know the best line, what I call shooting lanes for photography. I will grab people and move them right in front of me. Say, right here, get this shot right now. Because they're the priority. Well, I hate seeing people frustrated because they miss stuff because they haven't mastered those 3 elements.
Yeah. Wow. So what I would say is, Lee, is there a way for I have a link down below to the workshops that you're offering, and so people can get some more information. But if anyone had any questions or wanted to reach out to you about the workshops, what's the best way to contact you for that?
So I am one of those guys. I like all forms of communication. My website, leehoyphotography.com. You can learn about the mentorship programs there and register. The 2 that are open is part 1 and part 3. Part 2 is going to be very intensive to put together. I plan to. You can register for both. I only have 12 spots. If I get a ton of interest, I can always open up additional ones. I have the dates for both on there. I do offer a private. For a lot more money, I do offer a private mentorship program if you just want to go through it on your own. Right. When I do workshops, they're evolving. So I also have my workshops on there. I have my own, plus I partner Elise Bender, the Tamron ambassador, Matt Seuss, another Olympus system ambassador. He and I are going to do Big Bend together. I'm going to partner with John and Kinder Abbott, who do bug shop workshops. We're going to go do Sri Lanka. So I partner with other people too. Wildside Nature Tours, I have workshops there. I am starting to move to skill-specific workshops, okay? And here's why. People spend a lot of money going workshops, oftentimes think they're going to learn, but they get so caught up in certain things that they don't really learn much. So they're going to cool places, but their photography isn't necessarily advancing. So I've got an OM system only mastering manual exposure for landscapes in Big Bend. I've got mastering birds in flight on the Texas coast coming up this fall. And I'm very mean on that. I won't let you go off wandering around trying to find. I'm going to make you learn so that every time you go out after that, your photography is better. I'm doing an advanced mastering birds in flight on the Faroe Islands in 2026 with Elise Bender. We're just now working on that. I am doing an OM system only macro workshop in Costa Rica. Now I do have workshops for all systems. I have a Big Bend in winter for doesn't matter what camera system, and I can teach any camera system. That's not a problem. I'm creating a star trails using live composite. That's all the workshop's going to be right here where I live because I live in one of the darkest skies in the lower 48. So one of my thoughts about how to help my clients better is to actually make my workshops more skill specific rather than just saying, let's go to Costa Rica. Tons of shots look this. I am trying to make, when people invest $1 in me, I do not take that lightly. And you'll teach you all the special features over a 2-week period. It's a lot. But what I feel like is the more specific we get, the more effective the workshop will be. And that's my goal is, I'm not saying it's bad to go to a destination and just get shots. That's fun too. There's a place for that. but
Yeah.
I feel like I'm wired. I want to help people's photography take leaps of improvement, not always just incremental.
And it's clearly you love to teach, and you've been doing photography much sense. I really click with how you're describing things and explaining things. So definitely, like I said, check out the link below to his site if you want to get more information about the
Oh yeah, you had
mentorship.
asked me about that, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah.
Phone me,
No, you
text
started out
me,
there and then you
email
went off
me.
into, yeah.
I am available actually quite a bit. I'm home until late June, which this has been my longest period at home in 5 years. I'm I'm going to cut back some on my travel just because I love my home, and I've got now a lady in Brazil that has become very special to me, and I'm going to be going back and forth there. Um, so for me, I'm trying to figure out. Think about how much money people spend on gear alone. Let's think about that. If you have a just decent wildlife setup, you've spent minimum $4,000 by the time you add up everything, right? Minimum.
Yeah.
That's cheap. Even if you have a beginner's, say you buy the 100 to 400 version 2, say you buy an OM5, well, that's just that's no memory cards, that's not additional batteries, that's no camera strap, that's not right. We could go on. So let's just say you went super
Yeah.
cheap, $4,000 in. That's super cheap. Well, every dollar you invest, which is a lot, plus, I don't know about you, Rob, time is more valuable to me than money. I can always go work and posting some cool comments, right? Well, if Paul is going to invest to come see me, I've had some Aussies come up for workshops and stuff. I've had Aussies in my mentorship program. If he's going to spend that much money to fly here, he, by God, better learn something from me, right?
Yeah.
Because he's investing that time, a long flight, plus his money. Well, that better be well deserved in what I give him, because he's invested in that. So for me, like you are investing yourself, your time in me this morning. I don't take that lightly, and I'm always very appreciative to be on your channel. You're one of the nicest guys out there.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know me, y'all, I don't say compliments to blow air up someone's skirt. Rob is genuinely one of the most giving. I've got some other friends like him, and they're super treasures when you come across someone like Rob. So yeah. And I really,
Learning photography on YouTube in general. What's your sort of take on that? Because you have a channel and you create content,
I do.
and what is your goal versus what you see, or how is that different than what you see from other channels?
Rob will tell you I'm one of the most brutally honest guys. I mean, he was saying it nice earlier about being direct and whatnot in my approach. I mean, not many people sometimes tell the people in the comments on their channel to kiss their butt. I'm putting it nicely, and move on and watch a Taylor Swift video, but I have done that. Look at their portfolio of work. Is it something that you would like to accomplish? If not, why would you listen to anything they have to say? Okay. If their portfolio doesn't speak for themselves, if you're listening to someone that's giving advice on Facebook, have you even clicked on their profile, look at their images? Many of the people that propose to be gurus out there, their images suck. If they are a top badge contributor, and I hope I don't step on toes. Well, no, I don't care if I step on toes. Let's be honest. If you're a top badge contributor on Facebook, that means you're on there all the time. When are you out in the field photographing, for God's sake, right? So look at their portfolio. Okay. If you shoot a particular system, have you looked at Canon Explorers of Light, Nikon ambassadors, OM system ambassadors, Panasonic, Fuji? And then are you looking at the ones whose genres represent what you're interested in? All right. When you're going to use YouTube, you need to understand there are, I would say, maybe 3 things about YouTube. One, it is a great place to solve a problem quick. If I'm debugging a website, I'm paying someone to redo my website now, because if I have spent an hour and a half being pissed about something, or something has pissed me off 3 times, that means it's time for me to move on. Lightroom Classics kind of starting to get there with me with secure. Oh, that's a whole nother topic. Okay. So If I have a problem with a certain plugin, I can go to YouTube and hopefully find an answer in under 5 minutes. That's a great thing about YouTube. Or if I want to install a fan, ceiling fan, whatever, right? Great. Rob and I were talking about this before we went live. You know, when it comes to gear reviews, you need to understand we've been given gear and some people are paid to do it. I have not asked for any money and I won't, because as soon as you do, that puts a different level of expectation. I have received free gear, but here's what you need to know. Every company that has sent me gear, when they contact me, one of the first things I say is, how familiar are you with my channel? Because you need to know, if you send me sucky gear, I will say that. Rob knows I will. Not many people will, but Rob knows I will. Because I've said it. I have said it about one OM system lens, the 100-400 version 1, I did not like. And I told OM that I have to be honest about that, because I want you to know when you come to me, I'm going to tell you my honest thoughts. So they sent me version 2 to test before it was released to the public. Like, go shoot it, Lee. Tell us what you think, because I will tell you. Like my Brazilian girlfriend knows, if she puts on an outfit, I have one or two responses. I'm sending you money through PayPal to go buy it right now, or my God, get a shovel, bury it, and bury the shovel. Okay? So Manfrotto Bogan sent me an email list about would I review their tripods, and I sent back, I said, you won't want to send me any of those tripods because it will not be a positive review. You may have some other ones, but you don't want to send me any of those.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Manfrotto, because they reached out to me as well, and I kind of had the same assessment. It's like there's really not any particular one that I could really feel strongly about versus, say, a competitor. They make
and
nice
you know what?
stuff.
Why not be honest with them? I would rather companies know. I was at a camera store event a year ago, May, in Seattle, and I can never pronounce it correctly. Sirui, S-I-R-U-I, tripod.
Yeah.
They have some great legs, but their ball heads suck. I can't tell you how many clients in the field I've had problems. When I walk up, they said, leave my tripod. I said, I bet you have a Sirui. And I walk up, I'm like, Mother of God, your ball head just, I said, what you do is you unscrew it and then you throw it as far as you possibly can so it'll frustrate you less. But their legs have some really good quality. And I said that in front of the rep, and he's like, well, I haven't. I said, well, dude, I'm out in the field all the time. There's a world of difference in a ball head in the middle of this store with air conditioning and heating than there is out there in Big Bend in the middle of a haboob blowing up. There's a world of difference. In fact, my video that came out, Rob, while we're talking, is how to buy camera gear wisely. So the second thing about YouTube that I'm talking about are camera reviews. You cannot review gear that you've only had your hands on a week. You can't do it. I don't care how familiar I am with something. I can do a first impressions video. And if you look at my channel, you will notice I did a 6-month review of the OM1 Mark II. I did not do a 1-week review. That is not fair to people. That is such bull crap. We've all met people that we liked for a month, and then at 1 month, 1 week, we realized, oh my God, I cannot stand this person, right? So you need to be honest with yourself when you are watching videos about gear. I am brutally honest, and you either hate me or you love me, and I'm fine either way. I'm from West Texas. I'm Gen X. You can't possibly find a combination that cares less about the opinion of others. If you're Gen X and from West, we don't give a rat's ass. I live on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere. My life is hard just because of the life I choose to live, which I love. So quit being so hung up on camera review sites and Facebook comments about gear. Quit it. You are learning so much nonsense from people that are making a lot of money and getting free gear. I get free gear, but trust me, I've told companies, you don't want to send me your crap. Okay. But I tell them, as long as you allow me to do a fair and honest thing, I know they want me to do more reviews quicker. Photo Pro just invited me to be an ambassador. I'm very proud of that. I love their gear. They sent me the Origin Travel Tripod Plus. I've done a first impressions. I haven't had time to go out yet and shoot a lot, so I can't give them a good review, but I will sell more gear by you letting me be me and being honest about it than you will forcing me into the mode that most people operate in. So that's the second thing about YouTube. But guess what? Rob will back me up. Rob, what videos get the most views? The dumbass drama videos like, is OM system going away? Will Micro Four Thirds? Listen, if I were just here for money, I would do that stupid shit. But I am not here for the money. I'm here to teach you photography. What frustrates me are the videos you need to watch from me are the ones that get the fewest views generally.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about
Sort
YouTube.
any YouTube channel by number of views, right? And watch those videos first.
Yeah. If you really want to master photography, quit spending all your time watching videos about gear reviews. But you're not, or the dramatic, you know what? Emily Talpin, another OM System ambassador, I mentored her in the OM System mentorship program. She was the only one that became a long-term ambassador. I'm very proud of that. She is an incredible lady. Early on, and she's the one that kept after me to do YouTube. She's the reason I have a YouTube channel. She told me I needed to put my face on my YouTube thumbnails. And if you watch, you should, but I can't do it. It's not me. So I know I punish myself because I do the thumbnails I want, not the thumbnails that people say will help you get more views, because I'm authentic. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I don't judge people that, plus look at me. Oh my God, I wear this jewelry and I have this long beard to try to distract you from here up, right? I don't want to be on my YouTube. I did it a couple times and I was like, I felt so cheesy doing that. So when you go to YouTube, guys, look for videos on Fieldcraft or specific settings in your gear that you have that will help advance your photography, and quit worrying about how many megapixels a camera has, or, well, Billy Joe Bob at DP Review said this when he took a picture of a piece of paper taped to a wall. I tell you what, bring that piece of paper, tape it to the cliff in the Faroe Islands when the wind's blowing 35 miles an hour. You hold a big giant ass Sony lens. I will hold my own system gear. And now let's see who's getting the shot.
Yeah.
I got on a rant, didn't I?
yeah, you did, but that's okay.
Let's do some questions.
I'm with you on all of that. Really, it's and every creator on YouTube that I respect has said a similar thing, right? So the videos that I felt were the most important, the most educational, don't get any views.
No.
And the videos about that really don't matter 6 months from now get all the views. It's crazy. So
it is. It's unfortunate too.
Okay, let me see if I can get one more question out. This is a little more personal about from Uneasy Rider. Says, do you have a bucket list subject animal you'd like to capture?
Yes, absolutely. Rhino is that's one of my next tattoos will probably be a rhino. I want to trek, and I doubt I'll do this as a workshop because I don't think many people would do what I'm willing to do because the conditions may or may not be miserable. Javan and Sumatran rhinos. Javan and Sumatran rhinos. I would love to. I love photographing in extremely challenging conditions. The harder it is to get the image, the more fun I'm having.
Yeah.
Because remember, I don't crop. Very, very rarely will I crop. So I like things that are hard for me to do. And I think that's because of the way I've lived my entire life, whether I was in wrestling practice, football practice, I pushed the hardest just because of the way I'm driven. And I can't say, well, I can't go back to why that happened, and it's not an important story. I do know why I'm that way. But let me show you a photo and let me preface it before I share the screen. This is not crop. This is using an on-camera flash with a diffuser, a K diffuser. This is with the 90 millimeter macro lens, and this is the kind of macro I could do all the time. I find most photographers give up too quick. So this is an orchid bee in Costa Rica in flight. Okay, this is not a high-speed macro setup. This is a single. This is using the OM System FL700 flash with an 8K diffuser with the 90 millimeter macro. Now, these are very easy to spook bees. I was with one of the best entomologists, he was probably the best entomologist in Central America. He had the pheromones on cotton to a tree, and I saw these bees would fly up and get close, and I'm having to be very still and then move within a few inches of this bee and photograph. Now, the cool thing is one of the partners of the lodge also has OM System gear. And once I taught him, he got some shots like this. And he'd only been using OM System gear for a couple of months, but he listened to the Fieldcraft, he listened to the settings, and he was patient, and he got it. So when I go out, let me show you. Whoops. Let me go. Let me show y'all another image. Okay. This is in winds gusting 30 to 35 miles an hour. You see the ocean crashing behind this bird. The puffins are coming in out of control. This is in the Faroes. 1 foot is on the edge of a 150-foot cliff. Another's on a trail about 1.5 feet down. So my footing was not even. I could do this for days on end because it's challenging. I love this. This is the kind of stuff I live for. So the reason I say Javan and Sumatran rhinos, and I have been within 10 feet of white rhino in Zambia. I mean, I've been moved to the point of tears because as a kid, I never thought I'd get to go do that. So being 10 foot away, holding my wide angle lens out in front of me while I'm needling in front of a rhino is an amazing experience. Okay.
Wow. Well, so, I hope to see that shot one day.
Yeah. I don't know if I have it available right. Well, I'll show you one that okay. I think I may have showed this the last. Oh, crud. Hold on. I hit the wrong thing. Sorry, Rob. I'll get my crap together here in a minute.
I'll just post this real quick. Paul said he'll join you on that trek.
You will? Okay. Yeah. One of the things that I struggle with is most things I want to go do, I can't get many other people to go do it with me. In a couple of days, I'm going to go to the highest point in Texas and do star trails up there. I'm going to put the obelisk on the North Star. That's my goal, is to have the obelisk touching the North Star and then do star trails. But it's a very strenuous hike, and most clients won't go do it. So here, I'm 12 feet from this elephant on my knees with my clients.
Wow.
Using the 12 to 100 lens at about 24 millimeters effective focal length. And this bull elephant's kicking sand. You can see the sand in front of his ear. He's throwing sand with his trunk, sand up. That is the kind of, I could do that all day long. Or star trails with Old Faithful while it's erupting at night. That's challenging. I can do that all day long. Minus 20 something degrees, the sunlight through the trees, put me out in brutal conditions. I will do that all day long. Trying to get 2 species shots. I don't do composites. Screw composites. That's for cheaters, liars, and I'm teasing. I'm being a little brutal. Listen, if you do a composite and you're not honest about it, you're on my list of one of the worst kinds of photographers. So 2 species shots, that challenge all day long. Not cropping your image all day long. Black and white, not cropped all day long. So man. I want to be pushed myself to the hardest type of things to do. So my bucket list are things that generally would not get me many clients because I like to be uncomfortable to do it. I want to mentally, physically, and emotionally push myself far. to do it. So that's
Yeah.
something. Yeah, yeah.
But you want to make using the camera gear easy, right?
You know what? That's another reason I love OM System, man.
Yeah.
Um, I like so I got washed over with a wave in the Galapagos with my OM System gear. No big deal. I kept shooting. Yeah, yeah. I love that stuff, man. There is something so rewarding. This is what if you use AI to add a moose into a landscape shot, someone should Tanya Harding you. Uh I just can't. Oh, hey, Chris is here. Hey guys,
Yeah.
if you don't follow Chris McGinnis, Innis to Winnis, he's an OM System ambassador. He's an Olympus employee, but an OM System ambassador. Chris is an amazing guy, great, and a phenomenal macro shot.
Yeah.
Is obviously.
Yeah. But you were just talking about AI. I was like, oh well, here we go.
Now listen, AI for noise reduction and sharpening, no big deal. You are not. To me, that's no problem. Sky replacements. Oh my God. And I know. Oh God. Okay. Stop putting your hawk with your wide angle sky. It sucks. It's obvious. And you fool the
Yeah.
beginner, but you don't fool people in the know. Just please stop. Stop. Yeah, Paul,
Yeah.
you're right. Perth to Indonesia is not a hard trip. So maybe you should go with me to Sri Lanka, man. I'm going. And John Abbott and Kendra Abbott, John has written many field guides on dragonflies. He's one of the Odonata experts in the world. So awesome guy. He was a cannon shooter for a long time, and I kept saying, dude, you need to try OM for macro. No. Then the other day, Kendra sent me a message. We bought an OM system for mass. Like, dang straight, baby.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm gonna. Well, okay. Anyway, I don't want to criticize people what gear they buy, but it's like a lot of people come to me and ask me, in the photo club, what should I get? Because they're thinking about buying another camera, and I'm like, of course, OM systems, right, for the stuff that you want to shoot, the birding and wildlife. And then they come back with a Canon, and I'm like, hey, great, I'm sure you get some great shots, right? And I'm like, why don't you get that 200 to 800 lens that they have out? That's what you need. Like, no, it's just too big. I'm like, I told you. I told you. Anyway,
No,
um,
no. You know what? I here's what I say when I do a camera store event. When OM System sends me, whether it's Precision Camera in Austin or is it Roberts there in Seattle? That was an awesome shop. I've gone to
yeah,
different camera stores, some amazing shops. Allen's up in Pennsylvania is incredible. Been to some great camera stores. Here's what I say, and I say this in front of the other reps, and most of them are reps. I'm different. I'm not a rep. I'm an ambassador who does workshops. So most of them are reps who just travel around repping, and some of them are photographers. Some don't get out to shoot much. So I like them. They're all super nice people. We have good visits, but they know I'm different. And I will say, listen, I will be honest. They will outsell me every day of the week in the store. But outside, I will outsell them. I will run laps around them when I can show you real world conditions. If Sony, Canon, Nikon, and OM System, Panasonic, Fuji, if we set up on the Faroe Islands near the edge of the cliff in the wind, I would outsell them every single time. Every single time I'll outsell them. So you can waste your money and buy a big expensive Canon lens and lug that crap around. Now, I have a friend who's a Canon Explorer of Light. He's phenomenal. He's been shooting for decades, but he still can't go. He can't get that shot of the one I just showed you of Yellowstone, of Old Faithful erupting at night with star trails. He's not doing that. Why spend 3 times the money for less features? Yes, you can get great shots. You can run any car you want in a race. I mean, you could go out. Let's go to the F1 track in Austin. Somebody can bring a Prius. Somebody can bring a Ferrari. They'll all drive the track, but what's going to get you the best for what you want to do? Okay.
yeah, yeah. It's. I never criticize people for getting what they want, but they come to me like 6 months later and like, how did you get that shot? Because I'm shooting 300 f4 with a 1.4 teleconverter. So I have what, an 800 equivalent. And I'm like,
840.
well, you can get the same shot. You just need to get the 200 to 800 zoom lens that Canon has. You know, they're sitting there, they're going out with a 70 to 200. I'm like, no, you need a longer lens. And they're like, oh
Have
no, it's
more.
too big. So
Yeah.
I tried to tell you 6 months ago, but anyhow, that was like just last week I was talking. But it happens all the
It
time and time again.
all
The size and weight of the system is always the limitation for a lot of these people, uh, and not being able to let go of high ISO. They
yeah,
need to let
that's the
that
big
idea
thing.
go.
Mhm. If
So
I
some of
can
my
get
nice,
people, if you
Mhm.
gave me 12 people who were thinking, who were frustrated with their system, and I could put them on a skiff on a tributary in the Amazon and assume money's not an object, I can
Yeah,
probably get every single one of them in OM system when I show them what I can do.
yeah,
In the store, they won't believe it, but once you get on a
right.
skiff with 12 people in the Amazon, and then they see, they go, "Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been convinced yet to move to another system for my birding. And I have access to any lens and camera system I want, basically outside of Leica and Hasselblad.
yeah,
That's
yeah."
my bucket list one day. But
Did
for
Rob? Did I
birding,
share this? Did I share this data with you on the last one? The number one Googled search term combined with bird photography in
Mhm.
2024 was the OM1 and bird photography. Number
Yeah,
one Google search term combined with bird photography.
yeah, it doesn't surprise me because it's such a great, it's really a great system, and I've never seen any serious reviewer online say one bad thing about OM systems and using their cameras. They may not switch because
No.
whatever they're using is right for them, but
Yep.
they really didn't have anything bad to say about the OM system. And for a lot of people, I think it's a good idea. Anyway, what were you going
I
to
won't
say?
share names. I won't share
Mm.
names to protect them. I have had a lot of professional photographers send me private messages, text me, call me, and I know they would like to go to OM system, but for a variety of reasons, they won't. And a big one is, I guarantee this, I'm not going to call any names, they are worried about losing credibility with clients who believe that
Mm.
OM system's an inferior. Guarantee it, because they see the shots I get. They
Yeah,
know. But it's so funny because I know some of the things that hold them back, and I just laugh to myself and go, hey, no problem.
yeah, yeah. I know. Well, then there's those that'll say we're delusional, but hey, to each its own, right?
On the ball. Sure, sure, sure,
So,
sure, sure.
a couple last questions, then we'll wrap this up. Jeff is asking, do you use the 300 f4 Pro much?
Jeff, great question. Um, Before I bought the 150 to 400, loved it. And I still love that lens. I still love that lens. For wildlife, I love my zoom. So the
Yeah.
300 f4, I used with the 1.4 and the doubler without hesitation and got lots of amazing shots. I owned two. I sold one to a friend. I will not sell the other one because it's my backup in case something happens to my 150 to 400. It is crazy to have such a phenomenal lens and not use it as much. And the only reason I don't is because of the versatility of the 150 to 400. If someone does not have, if you, I did a video not that long ago about my preference of super telephoto lenses for OM system shooters. Number one is the 150 to 400. Okay, hands down. I don't use it much. Has nothing to do with any fault of the lens. It just has to do with the 150 to 400. If I didn't
Yeah,
know,
I don't think anybody that had both lenses would use the 300 much. If
yeah,
I had a
yeah,
150 to 400, that would be my go-to 99% of the time.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly,
but
exactly.
since I
Yep,
don't,
yep.
and I'm pretty good at sighting the bird and working with a prime, and most of the birds are so far away anyway. But yeah, that is a good question though. The 300 f4 is a great lens. Just because you're not using
Phenomenal.
it, probably because you have a better lens.
That's the only reason. That is the only
Yeah.
reason. And there's only one lens that I think is better than that, and that's the 150 to 400. That's the only lens that's better in terms of wildlife.
Yeah, and that's because of the zoom functionality
That's
mostly,
because
right?
of the
Do you see
versatility.
anything? You don't see
Image
much difference in
quality,
quality?
yeah, image quality, they're going to be right up
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And then Paul is asking, and this will be the last one, about mixing OM and Panasonic lenses and bodies. And I
So,
think,
Sonic lens, okay.
mm,
Having said that, I wouldn't anyways, except potentially for video. Okay.
mhm,
So because I'm an ambassador, I did not own any Panasonic lenses. I've never had a client who's a Panasonic shooter. I rarely see Panasonic stuff out in the field. Rarely do I
yeah,
see
me
Panasonic.
neither, actually. Yeah,
And
not for
what's funny
bird
is
and
precision
wildlife.
camera gives way more shelf space to Panasonic than OM. I'm like, man. So if I were to mix, Paul, it would probably be for video. I mean, Panasonic has put a lot into video. Let's be honest. Panasonic has some pretty unique features for video. They have 2 camera bodies out now that you can live stream from direct from the camera, which remember, guys, me talking, well, on my channel, no. Yeah, I think it was my channel, my last YouTube live. I am looking into doing some of my YouTube lives live in the field. Okay. So where I would stream because I have Starlink, I could take it with me and stream from big national park doing a YouTube live. That
Wow.
Panasonic camera would let me do it easier. So for video, I would consider mixing because I film stuff on my own system gear. Yes, for video I would, but I can't officially use it, and I'm fine with that. Panasonic has some nice quality lenses. There's no doubt about that. I would never switch from an OM system body to a Panasonic body for photography. For photography,
Yeah.
I think Panasonic video, they've got some outstanding quality in their video. They've really been creative, and rightfully so. They should continue that because they're doing a great job on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
OM system master video. Congrats, Panasonic, for that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But you have to be pretty serious about video if you want to get if to take advantage of all of the things that a Panasonic can do. I
You know
think
what?
the
When
average
people,
person is not going to really see any difference, and just their phone is good enough
yeah,
for
I
video.
can say when it comes to video, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right, and by that I mean cinemagraphically. I'm going to use the
Mhm.
180 rule, and that is all completely different stuff than most nature photographers that just reach up, press the red button, and do video at their current photography settings. That's fine, and for social media, most people don't care. But I'm OCD. I'm going to do it right, and that's a completely different ball game.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Lee. Well, thank you so much for being here today, and I think it's great to have you because you're actually very, very different person in some ways, but we're very much alike in others.
That's right.
Meaning, uh, um,
You're
oh my
nicer
God.
than me. That's the difference. You're a lot
What's
nicer.
that? Well, I wouldn't say nicer, but in photography, I always say, either in a stream or when I'm out with people in the club, don't make photography hard. You know, it's like it's raining out. I'm not going, but you're the opposite. You love that stuff.
I do. I do. Give me a
You know?
downpour. I'll be shooting wildlife in an absolute downpour.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I'm a fair weather to have a diversity and having you here as many other guests I have, but having you here being such a outspoken, I cannot articulate who you are as well as you can yourself, but I really appreciate all the tips you gave. I was listening and taking all kinds of notes here
Thank you.
during the conversation, and I've learned a lot, and I hope the audience has as well. I'm sure they have. Thank you so much, Lee, and I'll leave you with the last word.
You know what, guys? If you enjoy my approach, you may not like me, but if you do, come join me on a work to promote me, help me, and elevate me. I truly am. I'm grateful for men and women like you that are out here in the nature photography world. You guys make life so much easier for those of us like me. So thank you for having me today. I always enjoy it. You're a super genuine good guy. And guys, I don't say this. I've been on somewhere I go, yeah, bye. Thanks for having me. But Rob, I really mean it. I really appreciate you, and I
Oh,
always
well,
enjoy doing these.
the honor and privilege is all mine, and I'm very, very grateful that you could be with me today and spend as much time as you had. I know we're way over budget here, but I really appreciate it. And that was the last word. So, everyone, thanks for being with us today. It was great having you here and watching. I hope you got something out of it as much as I did. And we'll see you again soon.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.